like, they're gonna see you in jail for his hostages. Like, I don't think they care if you eat another candy. I go, no, it's nothing. I think, you know, you want to candy. Yeah. They were good. What?
All right, we're going to go ahead and call the meeting, City Commission meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Well, good evening. For those of you just joining us, we finished our work session, and now we're moving into our regular commission meeting. So with that, we'll start with roll call.
Benson.
Here.
Brunig. Here. Johnson.
Present.
Maibaum.
Present.
Schramm.
Here.
Weber.
Here.
Villanueva.
Present.
Mayor Mosier.
Here.
City Manager Leon.
Here.
City Attorney Denherter.
Here.
All right, number 2 under routine business is to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of September 12th, 2022. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any commission discussion on the minutes? Anybody in the public? All those in favor of approving the minutes of September 12th, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. And anybody abstaining? All right. Moving along then in routine business, I will turn it over to City Manager Leon to give her city manager's report.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor, members of the commission and public who are either with us or listening. Our mission at the City of Yankton is to provide exemplary experiences, services, and spaces that will create opportunities for everyone to learn, engage, and thrive. So that's what we're about. A couple of updates. Sales tax wise, if you haven't read the article in the P&D yet, I'll give you a little update on sales tax. You received the sales tax report, I believe, last week. However, for the month, we were up 10.39%, with the difference for the year of being up 8%. Triple B was down slightly, however, still up 5%. Year end. So those are really good numbers for us, and we're excited about that. I also want to remind the commission things cost more, so there's more tax when things cost more, and things that cost more impact us as well. So our costs are up too. So I don't want to be negative, but I just want folks to keep that in mind. Depending upon what number you believe as our inflation rate, we may be keeping up, we may be slightly ahead, we may be behind. So just something to keep watching as we head into fall and winter months, and keep watching the national economy. Have you gotten your e-ticket yet? That's a ticket you don't want. Our e-ticket citations are rolling, so you will not receive one if you're abiding by traffic laws, but our officers are issuing e-tickets now, and that's they're working out any bugs on that, so far going smoothly. Thank you to the, since we last met, the airport and the WIRA group, as well as the volunteer firemen and the auxiliary club, who put on 2 great pancake feeds. So both beautiful days and good turnouts for both events. Next week, many of us will be attending the South Dakota Municipal League annual conference in Watertown, so we'll be coming to and from Yankton for that. As the first vice president, there's rumor that next year I will be the president of the municipal league, so we'll look forward to, if elected, connecting with our state legislators and others in the legislature, talking a lot with them about ways we can continue to make South Dakota great and a great place for cities, specifically in South Dakota. So the public and the commission's aware. There will be some additional travel that I need to make within the state throughout next year, October through October, with my responsibilities on the board. A little update on the West Side Park project. We do have the blocks, all of the blocks placed in West Side Park. They're working on capping those blocks and the abutments for the bridge. I'm working with staff at Avera on some signage, as well as a date in early November for a sort of a grand opening / ribbon cutting. So when that gets established, you'll all be invited to attend that as well. So that is shaping up, and looking at an end of October date to have that contract completed. I would ask that you remove the executive session topic from your agenda this evening. We thought we were going to have an item to discuss with you, and that did not come through. That's why you did not see an explanation on that from me. So that is not something we need to work on this evening. I'm happy to stand for questions, Mayor, if there's anyone that would like to ask anything of me further.
Does anybody have questions for the city manager?
Amy, I just want to say I think I speak for the whole commission when I say I'm very appreciative of you willing to step up and lead the municipal league the next year. It's important work, and I know you'll do a great job.
Well, thank you. As some of you may know, Yvonne Taylor, our long-term executive director, is retiring at the end of the year. So the board does have an offer out to a new executive director, which will be announced at the conference. We are excited about that. So this individual is filling big shoes, and I'm filling big shoes from Mayor Allender of Rapid City. So we'll learn together, but I'm excited to see what we can bring to the state. So thanks for saying that.
Any other comments or questions from the commission? All right, moving on then. This is public appearances on the agenda. This is the time and the place for anybody that wants to address the city commission on an item not on the agenda this evening. All right, seeing no movement, we will move on to the consent agenda. And since both of them are transient merchant license, with the pleasure of the commission, I'll read them both and then ask for an overall approval. First one is consideration of memorandum 22-178, recommending approval of the application from Country Fresh Farms for September 28th through October 1st, 2022. And number two is consideration of memorandum 22-179, recommending approval of the application from Mount Marty University for October 1st, 2022 to October 31st, 2022. What is the commission pleasure on the consent agenda items?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion on the consent agenda items? Anybody in the public want to address the commission? Roll call. I can do vote one, all right. I'll get it down. All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Anybody abstaining? All right, consent agenda passed. Moving along then into old business. Number one is a consideration of memorandum 22-176 regarding the request for a special events malt beverage on sale retailer's license for 3 days, October 7, 8, and 9, 2022, from the National Field Archery Association Foundation. Morgan Palmer, Marketing and Events Coordinator, and that's located at 800 Archery Lane. What is your pleasure?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any commission discussion on this agenda item? Anybody in the public? Now we'll do roll call.
Johnson.
Aye.
Maibaum.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Villanueva.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Brunick.
Aye.
Mayor Mosier.
Aye, motion carries. Moving on to new business then on the agenda. Number one is consideration of memorandum 22-177 regarding the final project acceptance for the Huther Family Aquatics Center. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
We We have a motion and a second. Amy, any thing you want to update the commission on as far as closing out this project and the numbers?
Nothing specifically, Mayor. As the commission knows, that this is our final date to close out the project. The final construction contract amount was $10,974,229.61. So you see in your packet there the low bid that was received and then the change orders, which is what brought us to that amount. So Stockwell engineers, as well as our city engineers, recommending that we close out that project and move forward into operations with nothing further for the contractor.
Any commission discussion?
I think it's just great way to end the project. I mean, it's still very much below what we originally expected, and I think we can consider it a success. And I want to thank Adam and Todd for their work on the project. Adam, I've noticed the sidewalks installed near there, and I think it looks great. So hopefully that's also a safety feature for kids running across the street there. So thank you, everyone.
Yes. Anybody else? Anybody in the public want to address the commission on this? Roll call.
Mybom.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Villanueva.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Brunig.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Mayor Mosher.
Aye, motion carries. Number 2 under new business is consideration of memorandum 22-175 regarding a change order number 1 and final project acceptance and final payment for the Whiting Drive project. What is your pleasure?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any commission discussion here? That final project cost, it looks like, is $442,235.20. The change order. So any questions from the commission? Anybody in the public? Roll call.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Villanueva.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Brunig.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Mybom.
Aye.
Mayor Mosher.
Aye, motion carries. Number 3, and we keep just closing things out here. I love it, getting all this done in our community, is consideration of memorandum 22-174 regarding change order number 1 and final project acceptance and final payment for the 21st Street, West City Limits Road, and Summit Street pavement replacement projects. That's for a total of $1,023,339.74. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any commission discussion on this change order and acceptance? Anybody in the public? Roll call.
Weber.
Aye.
Villanueva.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Brunig.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Mybom.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Mayor Mosher.
Aye, motion carries. Number 4 under new business is consideration of memorandum 22-168 regarding cold applied plastic pavement marking installation closeout. This would be again for a change order and approve the completion of the project for a total of $57,733.20. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any commission discussion? Anybody in the public? Roll call.
Villanueva.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Brunig.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Mybom.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Mayor Mosher.
Aye, motion carries. Number 5 under new business is consideration of memorandum 22-173 regarding a funding request for the swim team. City Manager Leon, I'll probably have you walk us through this and what's being requested tonight before I ask for a motion.
Sure. The Yankton swim team is requesting a reimbursement for a rental fee of the adventure pool at the Huther Family Aquatic Center. The request is in the amount of $1,500 from the BBB. And we'll talk a little bit about that dollar amount in a second here, but the Yankton swim team did rent the facility for the South Dakota Long Course B Championship meet. And that was earlier this summer in July, the weekend where there was like a little tent city all around the aquatic center for the whole weekend. We have not actually billed the swim team yet, so this technically is not a reimbursement, but rather a waiving of the fee. As I've been informed, we have not billed yet. Additionally, we did place an ad, is my understanding, in the swim team's promotional material for the Huther Family Aquatic Center, promoting the facility. Hopefully those folks that were here for the swim team will come back and utilize facility. And that ad was $275. So if we waive the amount, we would be waiving, if you waive the amount that owed, it would be in the dollar amount of $1,225 even. The swim team hosted teams from all over South Dakota, a total of 258 participants. In visiting with the swim team, they believe this request meets the intent of promoting Yankton and its businesses, as many of those folks were from out of town, stayed overnight, ate at our restaurants, hopefully did some shopping, bought gas, etc. The letter attached does provide more information regarding the request. We did have to alter some of our operations during the weekend of the swim meet. We did experience some day pass purchases for family areas that were and did remain open. However, the revenue for that weekend was less average than regular season in the weekend. There was some weather-related delays and things that particular weekend too, due to some rain. But I'm happy to try to answer more specific questions. Otherwise, we do have folks from the swim team here too tonight, I believe, if you'd like to speak with them further. But a successful event, exactly part of what the goal was for the Huther Family Aquatic Center, is to bring people from other places to come to Yankton. So.
Would one of you like to take the microphone to answer a question? They're both running, trust me, you can't see them. If you could tell us your names and what you do tied to the swim team, then I'll ask my question.
I'm Corey and Melissa Wright. I work for First Dakota. I'm VP of IT infrastructure for them.
I'm Melissa Wright, and I am currently co-president for the Yankton swim team.
Wonderful. Is this an event that I would assume is held annually, but is it one that rotates around the state, and Yankton was just selected to host that, or how did we come about having this event?
Correct. It rotates throughout the state, and it was just Yankton's turn to host it.
Traditionally, it's seen at swim facilities that maybe are newer or in nicer shape than others. So it was nice to see it be here at our new one. So.
And how many Yankton swimmers did we have in the event?
I think it was around 40.
Wow. That's wonderful. Is that just because it's local, or do kids have to qualify? I'm just curious. I like to know about events.
So for this one, anyone could swim it. You don't have to qualify.
They consider this the last chance to qualify for what they call A-State. And so there's time standards set by USA Swim. And then if they meet those standards, they can go qualify for state. They further standards that they can qualify for zones and further on. So.
Wonderful. Any other questions for the swim team? All right, with that, I would ask for what is your pleasure on this agenda item?
I'd make a motion to approve the memorandum.
Second.
We do have a motion and a second. Any further commission discussion?
I mean, I would imagine the average difference loss for the weekend is way outshadowed by the net increase from the 258 plus 1 to 2 to 3 people per participant that are staying overnight and eating food here. So I think it's a net benefit for us to approve through the BBB, or waive through the BBB, essentially.
Are you asking a question?
No, I'm just making
Okay,
a
because
comment.
I don't know the answer to that, but,
No.
okay.
I'm just saying, I think net was a benefit versus the loss we had at the pool for the weekend.
I think it's also a great way to showcase our new facility to everyone in the state. So I appreciate you guys. You know, I know it's a lot of effort. It's effort to put those kind of events on. there's a lot of work, if you're volunteering. I appreciate it, and the community appreciates it.
Any other commission discussion?
Having two little swimmers of my own that like to swim like fish, I can tell you that there was quite a few people there. I know the impact was definitely felt in the community, so thanks for doing that.
They get that from their dad? No. Any other commission discussion? Anybody in the public? Roll call.
Benson.
Aye.
Brunick.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Mybom.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Villanueva.
Aye.
Mayor Mosher.
Aye, motion carries, and echo the thanks to the swim team and board and everybody that worked together to put that event on, and as has been said, showcased one of our premier facilities in our community, so thank you for your work on that. Number 6, under new business, is consideration of memorandum 22-169, recommending approval of resolution 22-42, which is the addition of a 72-unit Fairfield Inn and Suites located at 508 West 21st Street to the Yankton Business Improvement District Number 1. And this would then have them start collecting that $2 a night tax when they open. What is your pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any commission discussion? Seeing none, is there anybody in the public? Roll call.
Brunick.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Mybom.
Aye.
Schramm.
Aye.
Weber.
Aye.
Villanueva.
Aye.
Benson.
Aye.
Mayor Mosher.
Aye, and I, for one, am very excited about that mall property, or the hotel on the mall property opening in our community. It looks wonderful. It's fun to drive by there and see a nice building coming together in that lot. So excited to have that there. Number 7 is an introduction and first reading and establishing a public hearing for consideration of memorandum 22-171, which is an introduction, first reading, and to establish October 10th as the date for a public hearing to consider ordinance 1065, a rezoning from an I-1 industrial to a B2 business. This is at the location of 2000 Summit Street. List construction applicant. Can I get an introduction?
Introduce.
Number 8 under new business is consideration of memorandum 22-172 regarding dashboard training for the commission. So I don't know if I'm turning this over to City Manager Leon or City Attorney Dunherter to get this started.
We'll let Ross do most of the talking here, but as the commission's aware and as the public may be aware, annually we like to try to just do a little review of some of the fundamentals of the city manager commission form of government. And Ross has a number of topics that are important to touch on each year just to make sure we're all coloring inside the lines, so to speak, when it comes to our business. This isn't given or delivered to you as a warning, but it is brought up so everyone understands the levity of some of these things. If some of these things are not handled appropriately, that could be reason for us to not be able to take a certain action that the commission desires, or even perhaps having to report, for example, if you were outside of the rules of the quorum to the state, et cetera. So Ross is going to give you a little bit of overview here, and I'm sure there's going to be some questions, and we're happy to answer those.
All right. So you all have a copy of this on the agenda packet. It may be helpful to follow along. That's up to you. So the first thing I always like to start with is when you should not communicate with your constituents, because that seems like the most awkward, unrealistic sort of rule that's imposed on you guys, because you're elected to represent the citizens of this community. But this, when we're talking about matters that are quasi-judicial in nature, those are matters where you're not supposed to talk to your constituents if they're interested in those issues, because you're sitting in judgment over whether to grant or deny a certain right that is afforded to a small group or a single person instead of the community as a whole. So it's important for me to convey to you, particularly when we're talking about making our personal phone numbers or contact information more accessible to our constituents. This rule is very important to make sure you guys understand. So anytime that you are looking at granting maybe anything related to zoning other than changing the zoning laws, so it'd be conditional use permits, variance applications, complaining about whether people are following specific conditional use permits, things of that nature. If you get those calls, someone begins a conversation with, hey, I'm building this deck and I got a call from the folks at City Hall saying there's something about my deck that's not right. What do you think I should do? You say, call the folks at City Hall because I can't talk to you about that anymore. It might be coming before me. If someone's talking about hey, I'm looking at putting in a sidewalk cafe for my business. What do you think the commission would like to see in order to get that approved? You don't go there. Anytime we're issuing licenses, that's another class of quasi-judicial proceeding. You guys have a constitutional obligation to be neutral, so you cannot talk with your constituents about that. Resolutions of necessity on special assessments. That's another one that comes up from time to time. Usually those sail through without a lot of discussion, but that involves when our Yankton Community Lawn Service goes out and mows the lawns of people who refuse to take care of their own lawns. For instance, they get on our assessment roll. Those are special assessments. If they call you and say, what's the deal that the city is going to put this extra charge on my property tax? Where do you come off doing that? That's quasi-judicial, so you can't talk to them about those kinds of things, okay? Awards of a bid to a particular contractor or vendor. I've seen situations before where contractors will reach out and try to lobby commissioners for their particular their bid. When we're doing something that's more of the CMAR is an example. We're in the process of selecting. We probably shouldn't be having conversations with individual contractors about that along the way. So just be careful about that. The last one that generally will come before you every now and again is tax abatements. If you have a question about whether a conversation might be quasi-judicial, one way to weigh it in the back of your mind is, if the commission takes action on this, is it just affecting their rights, or is it the entire community? Ordinances, any kind of ordinance, even if it's changing zoning, that's okay, because those laws affect everybody, even if we're changing the zone of one particular space. The map that governs the zones is a law that affects everybody. So you can talk about that, but don't let the conversation steer toward, well, can I just ask for a variance for that instead? You got to be real careful. And if you're worried about it, if zoning comes up in conversation with constituents, just say you may be better off talking to somebody like Mr. Mingo over at Community Development. Not really best to have that conversation directly with your constituents. When you're communicating with your constituents in this particular realm, we call those communications ex parte. It's a phrase that lawyers use to basically mean it's a one-sided conversation. Sorry for the Latin term, but that's all it means. And the reason we're not supposed to have those communications outside these chambers is because what takes place here is a hearing. You guys are sitting in judgment just like a judge sits in judgment in a hearing at the courthouse. And the people whose rights are affected, whether it's the neighbors who are angry about what's being asked or the actual applicant or petitioner asking you for some particular right or license or whatever, all of that communication is supposed to take place in these chambers. So if you're having that conversation out of this room, that means the people who might not agree with that individual aren't able to hear what's being said to you, and they cannot give their yeah, but. So have those conversations here, and if you're approached, say, I'm sorry I can't talk to you about that, but hey, when it comes up on the agenda, come on down to the meeting. That's your opportunity to say your piece, not just to me, but to all of us. We're collectively your elected commission, and we vote by majority. So it's really important that you follow that rule, because the results of breaking that rule, regardless of how you vote on that ex parte matter, could result in having the court throw out the vote And if you're a long ways down the road, by the time that happens, you got a terrible mess on your hands. You can't just hit the undo button, but that's effectively what the law does. So protect your own votes by not engaging in ex parte communications. Does anybody have any questions about that one? Because that is the weirdest rule you have to follow. I want to make sure you all feel comfortable about that. All right. As a general rule, public records are freely available to you, and anybody who might ask you for them can also make those requests to staff. And if you get requests for documents, I just encourage you to send those people on to either Al or Amy or myself to try to sort out whether and how to get them what they're looking for. We're generally pretty responsive as long as people are being reasonable. And there's processes to handle giving out public information. There is a list of things that we get our hands on in city government from time to time, though, that do not rise to the level of public records. And to the extent that you guys would want to see those, we may not be able to share them with you, or we might have to restrict the manner in which they're shared with you in order to keep those records confidential. And the rest, the list is fairly logical, but it's things like employee medical records and personnel information. A lot of that information is shared with you guys, but those are often the things that we discuss in executive session, just because personnel records are private records. Employment applications with attachments, attorney-client communications, and attorney work product. That's why on a monthly basis, I prepare for you guys a report of all the legal matters that go through my office for you, and that is a confidential report, and I recover that from you when we're done, or make sure that it gets shredded, just so that we retain those confidences. Confidential criminal justice system that information that would be like police reports. Those typically are not public records, even though that stuff is sometimes juicy and you want to get your hands on it just for the gossip factor of it. Those records have to stay confidential. So there are some exceptions to that. Blood alcohol reports and 911 tapes are publicly available, but there are ways that criminal defendants can get their hands on the records that they need in order to prepare a defense, but those typically won't go through commission requests. Those would come through my office and the state's attorney's office. Other records, appraisals, those are typically considered private business records. Civil defense plans, private account payment information are records that go through the business office for water bills and things of that nature. That's private business records. Library records, the state laws protect our right to confidentiality in the records that we, or the books and things we consume in our library. That's private, even though we do keep those records. Correspondence, memoranda, calendars, logs of appointments, working papers and records and telephone calls, notes and calendars and appointment logs, or other personnel records of employees. So, the whole notion that I got to see that person's calendar to make sure they're getting my taxpayer dollars worth out of their job, we don't get into that level of detail with the public. We rely on excellent supervisors to take care of that for us. Any information that, if released, could endanger the life or safety of any person, that goes back to, our protocols for what we do in the event of a lockdown situation. Those records have to stay reasonably confidential. Financial, commercial, and proprietary information. We often get people that communicate with us to talk about economic development opportunities. Those records need to stay confidential if they are presented to us as confidential information. Those people spend a lot of money preparing their projects with the hopes that the city might be willing to potentially consider selling them a piece of land, for instance. And that is not our information to share with the public. In addition to these limited public records that we don't share, I would ask you not to share comments communicated to you from me in the context of me providing you guys legal advice or related to really anything, whether it's contract negotiation or litigation or whatever. My communications communicated to you in confidence are usually through executive session or in outside meetings. So it's pretty easy to know when to disclose what I said and when I don't. If I talk to you about an executive session, I'd ask you very much not to disclose those so that you can maintain attorney-client privilege. And then again, beyond that, communications you have with each other during executive session on those matters that are authorized should stay in this chamber, because if you communicate what was discussed outside, you lose that confidentiality for the entire group. And that can put us in a bad legal stance as it relates to litigation or contract negotiation, things of that nature. The public has a right to attend every official meeting of the City Commission. And an official meeting is any time that we publish notice of the meeting and that there's a quorum of the board present and there's deliberation and/or voting of an official city matter that takes place. So if you find yourself out and about in public and you see that there are 4 other commissioners that are also already there, even though it's not breaking the law, my recommendation is last person to arrive is a rotten egg, and better leave so the party doesn't get stinky. So I don't say that to stifle your personal lives and your professional desire to interact with the public in public events, but there are times where it's somewhat blessed, if you will, in the sense that we notify the public that there's likely going to, or there very well could be a quorum at maybe a chamber event or something like that. And because we publish notice of it, we just make it clear that there's no business to be discussed, no votes will be taken. It's complying with the law, but it also is being upfront with the public that we are not violating their trust by, conducting city business over drinks at some chamber mixer. Executive sessions generally, there is a very limited number of things we can discuss in executive session. We try hard to keep those within bounds so that we're not violating the public's trust. Amy and I and Al all try to keep everybody in line, and I don't think I can remember times where we've deviated from that. But the limited list is personnel matters, legal consultations regarding litigation or proposed or actual contractual matters, contracts for negotiating with employees, like the unions that we employ, business matters involving discussing marketing or pricing strategies by the commission of business owned by the city, when public discussion may be harmful to the competitive position of the business. So that actually includes our Summit Activities Center in terms of the business side of that operation. That is something that we can discuss because we are in competition, direct competition with private enterprise in that field. Protection of people/property. This is one of the newer additions, but this allows us to discuss in executive session information pertaining to the protection of the public or private property and any person on or within public or private property specific to vulnerability assessments or response plans intended to prevent or mitigate criminal acts. This is terrorism type. What do we do if someone walks in with a gun? Emergency management or response, and public safety information that would create a substantial likelihood of endangering public safety or property if it's disclosed. So that's kind of a catch-all that's thrown in, but I can't recall us having a situation where we needed to use that one for an executive session discussion. In executive session, we do not deliberate during the session on a topic not disclosed to the public. So we disclose to the public the broad categories that we're talking about. We stay within those categories when we're having our conversations. And we do not vote in executive session. If there is a vote to be had following an executive session, what we would need to do is come out of executive session and then have a discussion, ask for the input of the public, and then maybe further discussion, and then you would vote in reconvened regular session. We typically will never do that as protocol just because it seems a little underhanded to have, kick everybody out, have this discussion, and then, now we're in regular session, let's do a vote quick. So we've never structured a meeting that way. Because again, we try very hard to maintain a good relationship with the public. The public is not permitted to attend a legal executive session. However, the city manager has a right to attend and participate in all executive sessions unless the topic is her own removal. And the city attorney and finance officer may attend an executive session at the discretion of the board. So if any time you feel that Al or I need to get out, you can kick us out. But I generally think you like us there, but that's just being clear. You don't have to have us there. Any other city employee may attend an executive session at the discretion of the board. So there are often times that discussion involves an economic development proposed opportunity to sell a piece of land, for instance. That's a negotiation of a potential contract. Dave Mingo might be an appropriate person in that environment, for instance. But you guys get to decide who's there. As a general rule, you should participate in the deliberation at a meeting and then vote on every item. However, I do not want you to vote or debate on an issue when there's no quorum. I can't remember a time where we ever lost a quorum since I've been city attorney. If there has been improper public notice of the meeting, we have an automated process at City Hall that just magically publishes. It's amazing. Amy has great staff. Or if there's improper public notice of the item in question. So what that means is we cannot add things to the agenda to vote on it during the meeting. Does that make sense? Sometimes I give the commission a little leeway as it relates to discussion to talk about something that was maybe brought up at the beginning, but we never get to a point where we ever actually vote on something that was brought up at the meeting. We would need to postpone that to another meeting so that it can be noticed for the agenda, so the public has the opportunity to know that it's going to be there and show up to discuss it if they believe that that's something they want to participate in. Also, if you have a conflict of interest or your vote would present the appearance of bias, you should not vote, and here's those rules. 1, by statute, you cannot vote if you have a direct pecuniary interest in the matter before the governing body, benefiting your own property or affording a direct financial gain. So if it stands to do anything to put something in your pocket or prevent money from coming out of your pocket, separate from the community as a whole, you should not participate in that discussion and you should abstain from the vote. Also, if you don't believe you have a conflict, but 2/3 of your cohorts here on the board believe that you have a conflict, they can vote, and 2/3 vote can exclude you from voting on a particular matter. Or in quasi-judicial matters, when you're voting in that context, the rules that constitute a conflict of interest are much higher. So in addition to what I've already talked about, in a quasi-judicial matter, you can also be found to have a conflict if you have an indirect pecuniary interest that involves something close to your spouse, your employer, family member. If it's going to financially benefit someone who you believe the idea would be it's going to affect you emotionally more because you don't want to hurt them. If you feel that tug in your heart, don't vote on it if it's quasi-judicial. A direct personal interest that benefits you or a blood relative or a close friend in a non-financial way. But a matter of great importance, as in the case of a commissioner's mother being in a nursing home subject to a zoning issue. My church, who's being specially assessed for a sidewalk, or, I'm a member of the Elks Club, and this is the Elks, variance for something they want to build on their property. That would be, because of my membership, it creates the appearance that I'm no longer neutral, sitting in judgment over the rights of the parties involved. So that quasi-judicial is a lot closer scrutiny. If it's quasi-judicial and you have to ask me whether it's a conflict, you should probably abstain. That's the easiest way to think about it. An indirect personal interest in which an individual's judgment may be affected because of the membership in some organization or desire to help the organization to further its policies. That's so open-ended. The whole idea is if you're affiliated with anything at all that's quasi-judicial, you should probably just say, I'm not going to participate. And if everybody here has to abstain to the point where you would lose a quorum, then I would step in and say, okay, we got so many abstentions, we can no longer vote on this issue because we've lost a quorum. Now I will say, okay, attorney is pulling rank here, and I'm saying the law of necessity trumps conflict. But that's the only time, okay? So if we lose a quorum on a vote that's quasi-judicial or otherwise, based on conflict of interest, then everybody gets to vote anyway, because the obligation to do business is more important than the potential for a conflict. But until that happens, or unless that happens, I've never seen that happen, err on the side of caution. By contrast, in rulemaking or legislative matters, non-quasi-judicial matters, the only time you really shouldn't vote, if it's not a clear pecuniary interest or your commissioners have not said you have a conflict, is if there's reasonable or objective evidence that you have unalterably closed your mind on matters critical to the disposition of the matter or issue upon which you are voting. So that's where you've publicly gone in the paper and you said, nobody will ever convince me otherwise. I am voting this way on this issue. And that would be foolish. I would tell you never to do that. But the notion is you're here, you're discussing it as a group, and the input from this group is supposed to be considered before you vote. The input from the public should be considered before you vote to the extent that the public wants to speak to it. So in the interest of having an open mind and engaging in democratic debate and discussion, do not indicate that you have unequivocally decided you're going to vote before it comes up for discussion. It's one thing when you've had discussion and you push your button and you say, hey, folks, based on everything I've heard, I'm going to vote in favor of this. I think this is good. And that's fine because you've done it in the right way. Does that make sense? So that's one way where you can accidentally create for yourself a conflict just by the way you hold out your position to the public. As a general rule, you may talk with your fellow commissioners outside of these chambers. However, don't talk to each other if you see that there's a quorum of the commission there. Also, do not agree to horse trade. Do not swap votes. Say, I know you want this, but I want this, so I'll vote for that, but only if you vote for this for me. That is a no-no. That you can get in trouble for that. And never again tell folks that your vote is completely unchangeable. That's the point of these discussions. And then social media guidelines. Here's some practical guidance for the use of social media. Just to be smart, I would strongly encourage you not to post on each other's Facebook pages or Instagram sites because it's possible to create a quorum in a public meeting in a online thread. If you have 5 commissioners that are discussing on a message post, you've suddenly created a public meeting. Now we got to print that and we got to send it to the Open Meetings Commission, and it's a lot of work and embarrassment. So just be friendly to each other. Just don't maybe comment on each other's pages. Don't post confidential information or information discussed in executive session. I strongly recommend, especially if you guys use any of your pages for personal politicking, for running for or keeping your seats, maybe utilize a disclaimer on your page that says, I speak for myself when I promote my positions. I do not speak for the city of Yankton. That is important. You guys are one of 9 votes, and your vote is very important, but not one of you speaks for the city. It's a majority vote. It's the democratic process. And the things you say will be perceived by the public as the admissions of the city. So just be very careful about that. The disclaimer that's visible is important that way if you do mosey into politics in your online postings. People will sometimes want to reach out to you through Facebook or Instagram to make comments about things happening about town that are of a public interest, which is just fine. People want to reach out to their elected officials, but I would make sure you make it clear to them if the conversations mosey into quasi-judicial matters, shut them down. If it's posted, delete the post, but print it first so you can bring it to the commission meeting. It's just another way to accidentally find yourself in a little bit of trouble. Consider abstaining from voting on any quasi-judicial issue involving those who are Facebook friends. And once upon a time, I think people had smaller Facebook circles. I think it's pretty common now for people to have, over 1,000 or more friends. So the notion that someone isn't my Facebook friend, if they're in my circle, is maybe more of a stretch than not. But either let everybody be your friend or whittle down your friends. And if you're the type of person who whittles down your friends, have an idea who they are, and if their matter comes before you in a quasi-judicial proceeding, maybe encourage them, or maybe abstain from that discussion and step out of that conflict situation. Any questions? I've covered a lot of ground so far. I'm getting toward the division of duties. I don't want to move too fast if you guys have questions.
I did jot a couple of them down. So you were talking on quorum, and that is if 5 of us are present. Again, now we worry about emails, and if an individual from the public says, well, I know Jerry, and I know Bridget, and I know Mike, and I know Stephanie, and I know Ben. I just picked the first 5 in a row. And they email us a comment or something, and one of us hits reply all, I would imagine it's the same as what you just discussed. We've now created a quorum, and what are the rules and regulations, and what are next steps we'd have to do there?
All right, so if you ever
Same with text, too.
Yes, so again, if you are all on one email thread, if there's 5 of you on there and any one of you communicates, you've created a violation of the open meetings rules. So as a general rule, never hit reply all. In fact, shut that button off if you can help it. You can only ever communicate with 3 other commissioners at a time. Once you cross the 5 line, you've got a problem. So if you accidentally do that, print it off, get it to me, we'll sort it out. Just try very hard not to do that. Also, emails, if someone sends you something of a quasi-judicial nature, you get an email from a constituent who wants to complain about the setback issue that they're having with this thing they want to build, reply to them saying, I can't talk to you about this directly. Thank you for your input, but I will print this off and I will share it with the commission, and they can evaluate these notes the same time they evaluate everybody else's comments and your own as it comes before the commission. That's where that needs to take place, in the commission chambers. Be as polite as you can, but I do need you to proactively tell them, I can't discuss this with you. I'm very sorry. If you want to copy me on that, that would be even better, and I can maybe reach out to them and run interference for you. But emails, you can get into a lot of trouble under these rules. So try to keep yourself disciplined about it, and if you think anybody crossed the line or by accident or otherwise, just reach out to me. I can help you fix it to the extent that it needs to be fixed. Okay, just do the right thing, and then we don't have anything to fix. Any other questions?
I have one more.
Yep.
When we talk about abstaining from voting, I've always just made it, I guess I don't know if it's required or common practice to state the reason I'm not voting. Is that just good practice, or should that really be, many times people have heard me say, it's not a secret, my husband works for the city. So when city benefits come up, I will say I'm abstaining because my husband's a city employee. Is that just more common practice or niceties so that people know why I'm not doing it, or should we really do that anytime we abstain?
The only time you have to do that is in the context of the quasi-judicial, where there was communication or an independent investigation. You got into it too far before you realized, oh, I'm not supposed to be doing this, I'm sorry. You do need to disclose to the group the communications that you received, and then explain that based on that you're going to abstain. Just so that it's in the record. But apart from that, whether you abstain for just basic conflict of interest rules, you don't have to disclose that. I think that it may be a politically smart move to disclose it, so there's not an impression left that you just, don't care to participate in something that's of public interest, or you're making it clear that you're conscientious about your conflict of interest rules. I think there's generally only good that can come from disclosing why you're not voting, but no, I don't think you have to, unless it's the quasi-judicial situation where you know that whether it was by accident or whatever, you violated that ex parte rule, so you're stepping aside so as not to taint the vote. Make sense? All right.
I just wanted to clarify one thing we talked about earlier. So if a constituent calls us and it's something that's going to be a quasi judicial, and you said wait till it comes up on the next agenda,
Yeah.
they can come, anyone from the public can come to any meeting and bring up anything they want in the public appearance, correct?
They sure can.
So it'd probably be easier for me to say, just come to bring it up at the next meeting, as opposed to having that continued conversation and say, well, I'll let you know when it's on the next agenda, or you know what I mean?
You can, however, I think the smartest play there is to funnel the communications for that matter to the hearing in which it's scheduled. I think that if we know it's going to be there, funnel them to that meeting, because it could be 2-3 meetings before that matter is actually on the agenda, and it could clutter up a meeting and confuse you guys in a position, because you can't really debate it with them, you can't discuss it in that context. So what I might recommend they do is talk to Mr. Mingo, find out when it's going to be on the agenda. He might be able to answer their questions ahead of time, because sometimes it's just conveying of information. How do they do certain things?
Sure.
And he can help them understand when that particular matter is coming before planning and zoning, or when it's coming before this commission, and they can show up and make their comments or ask their questions at that time.
Sure. Okay.
But yeah, you can, yes. Short answer is yes, but I think it makes more sense to have them
Yep,
come to their
okay.
meetings. Any other questions? All right. Now, just one
Russ,
thing.
I'll
Yep.
interrupt here just for a second. So on the 7D, where we talk about rulemaking or legislative matters and not giving the impression that you have an unalterably closed mind, when you're talking to constituents and they ask you, hey, what do you think about this? You can say, yeah, I think generally I support that,
Yes.
but
You can
you know,
even say, I'll
expect
probably vote
I
on
will-
that.
I
I'll probably,
expect I will
yeah.
vote positive on that, but you just have to leave it open that my mind is not unalterable.
Correct.
Okay.
For that to really ding you, you have to say something that's pretty extreme. Like, you could never convince me that that's right. I will vote that down every time. Something that is almost incendiary and pretty firm in your commitment to vote a particular way before that would rise to a level where you shouldn't vote on it. All right, the last little bit I have on here is the division of responsibilities in our form of government. So we have a commissioner form of government with a city manager. I don't think there's many other communities in our state that have a form of government exactly like ours. I could be wrong. It's been a while since I've checked, but we have 9 commissioners and a city manager. The city manager is responsible for a laundry list of things that includes enforcing all the city ordinances. She does that through staff, including a police department and a code enforcement department. It's her job to supervise the administration of the city affairs, which I think she does fairly effectively. It's her job to prepare the agenda for the body in conjunction with the finance officer. It's her job to make recommendations to the body concerning city affairs. You'll see that's why almost every agenda item has a recommendation of some sort on it from staff. It's her job to appraise the body of the city's finances, thankfully with the help of Al, and then to submit an annual budget prior to August 1st of each year. It's her job to perform and enforce the terms of all contracts and franchises of which the city is a party. And it's her job to sign all warrants legally approved by the body for the payment of all money, includes all contracts over $200, which must be approved by the body. So we can take care as a staff of little expenses, but anything over $200, this commission approves, which is why we've got giant stacks of warrants for you guys to review and approve. It's her job to prepare, introduce, and discuss all ordinances and resolutions. That comes oftentimes with my assistance. And it's her job to appoint and remove all officers and employees, or to do the same through delegation to a department head. You see that there's a statute there that's cited, SDCL 9-10-13. That's the specific provision that relates to Amy's responsibility as city manager to be responsible for the personnel. And that's, by the same token, a limitation that you guys have to live with under SDCL 9-10-16. It is a Class 2 misdemeanor for you guys to direct city employees in the performance of their duties. So it's very common that you guys will have the opportunity to talk with staff. Just make sure you funnel those conversations through the city manager. She'll line you up with people that can answer your questions, and she does a nice job of that. But if you end around the city manager and her responsibilities to manage all of those employees, you can be convicted of a Class 2 misdemeanor, and that also results in your removal from office. So I know this commission has been great. Years ago, there were some problems with that, and that was heartburn for the city attorney at that point, because he knew darn well that commissioners were overstepping and in the process committing crimes. So understand that as commissioners, your role is to point the ship, and it's Amy's job to sail it. Does that make sense? So duties of the commission: it's your job to review issues presented by the city manager, to consider public input with the limitations we've discussed, and then to vote on all issues subject to the rules that we've discussed, conflict of interest and things of that nature. You guys, as far as personnel matters go, appoint the city manager, the finance officer, the city attorney, and the members of the library board of trustees. If necessary, you have the right and the privilege to inquire of city employees. Typically, it would be informally through the manager, or formally here, which is the way we structure our meetings, to have the staff that speak to issues available to answer your questions. Just understand that inquiry is gathering of information. It's not necessarily saying, no, I don't like the way you painted that building, you should paint it a different color. You know, that's beyond the scope of what the commissioners do. Our mayor is one of you, as you know. You guys elect your mayor from your group. The mayor presides over the commission and runs the meetings. It's her job to receive service of process and litigation, so I often have to bring documents for Mayor Mosher to sign. She's also the head of the city for military and ceremonial purposes. So she gets to cut ribbons and kiss babies. And then after that, in times of public danger or emergency, the mayor gets to take command of the police. You get to appoint additional police. Yeah. Governed by proclamation, call on all adults to aid in the enforcement of laws, and call out any organized militia within the county to suppress any riots or other disorderly conduct. So you can tell that is a very old law, but it is something that you get as emergency powers in the event that there is a emergency called at the state and local levels. So any questions about everybody's lane that we have to drive in here? We feel pretty good about it? All right, that's the end of the dashboard, guys. Thanks for humoring me.
All right. Thank you, Ross, for doing that. I think, as I shared with the media on Friday, always very timely information for all of us to hear, but I think also timely to do it in an open meeting like this, because I think it's good for the public to also hear that we are elected to serve, but we have to do it the right way. And so I always think it's good to go through this so we all are on the same page together. So Thank you for that. Number 9, then under new business, is the City Commission acting as a zoning board of adjustment, Memorandum 22-170, establishing October 10th, 2022 as the date for a public hearing to consider a variance from the city's maximum lot coverage. Extended description there, in an R4 multiple family district of Todd's addition to the city of Yankton. Address is 507 and 509 Douglas Avenue. Gary Johnson and Christine Munson are owners. Can I get an introduction?
Introduced.
Item is so introduced that completes the end of our new business agenda, as City Manager Leone shared earlier during her update. We do not have any matters in front of the commission tonight to have to adjourn into executive session. So with that, then I would ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting of September 26th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. And anybody abstaining? Meeting is adjourned. Have a good night, everyone.